Welcome to the Men of Iron podcast, where we equip and encourage men to grow to be godly leaders in their families, churches, and communities. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Men of Iron podcast, episode 10. My name is Steve Glick. I'm here with my brother from another, Garrett Barbush.
Episode 10, Steve.
Man, double digits.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man.
Who would have ever thought?
Well, I believed in you the whole time.
Appreciate it, man. Humble beginnings, you know?
Yeah, humble beginnings. And here we are, humble beginnings again, due to the fact that we have a flooded building, and we had to move locations, and we did not have proper ear attire, headphone attire. And so Steve and I we're sharing nice and close headphones. We were really prepared for this one, so bear with us, folks.
That's what happens when you get kind of ousted from your comfortable surroundings in the land of milk and honey. Although, technically, we're still in the land of milk and honey.
We are still in the promised land.
We're just on the outskirts of the promised land.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a little nicer out here, though, I gotta say.
Yeah, it's climate control.
Well, today's episode 10, is brought to you by Brookside Builders, a full-service residential remodeler serving the Lancaster, PA area since 1999. We love Brookside.
Love them,
don't we? So go to brooksidebrothers.com for all your remodeling dreams.
High quality work there.
High quality work. High quality H2O.
At high quality H2O.
So I'd like to introduce our special guest for today. Today is an exciting episode. Today we have MJ Salvatore. MJ is a volunteer campus community group director at VOX Church in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Shout out Connecticut, New England area.
New England, baby.
Yeah, he's also a personal trainer and group exercise trainer for his local YMCA. He has a heart for men's ministry, discipleship, creating community, and investing in leaders. And I got to say, he also knows how to come dressed to the T for this Men of Iron podcast.
Yeah,
look at him.
Look at that iron sharpens iron shirt, man. You look good, MJ.
Looking good. What's going on, man? You want to say what's up to our Men of Iron community?
Absolutely. Happy to be here, guys. You guys are awesome. Looking forward to chatting with you today.
We are honored to have you, man. This is fun. MJ's kind of been a friend of Men of Iron for, I don't know, probably a couple years, and I reached out to him about joining the podcast because I just love what he's all about. I love his heart for community, his heart for men's ministry, for discipleship, and I thought, who better to talk about building community than MJ Salvatore?
Yeah, the campus community group director. Talk about community. Right?
Seriously, This guy just eats and breathes community and discipleship, so we're honored to have you, MJ.
Thank you guys so much. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, man. So we're going to start this off with Take 5.
I can't wait.
I still need some exciting intro music for Take 5.
Like
Yeah, exactly. Something
like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you know?
something to get us going. So, MJ, you ready for this?
As ready as I think I'll ever be. Let's do it.
I don't know if it's hot in Bridgeport, Connecticut, but it is hot down here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
It's a million degrees.
It's oppressive in Connecticut today.
So we're going to make you sweat a little more. So get ready.
All
right. Question number 1 for Take 5 is, who or what inspires you?
Great question. First and foremost, God, just living, breathing example of a leader and the people that I'm currently running my life with right now.
Awesome. I love it, man. Question number 2 is, what is one of your favorite childhood memories?
Ooh, probably when I was about 6 years old, I got to meet the Green Power Ranger at the shop in my town. I was a diehard Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan, so I got to meet the Green Ranger at 6. Got the picture and stamp to approve all that.
Man.
So, yeah.
Talk about childhood memories.
That's probably not something you want to admit on a men's ministry podcast, MJ, but hey, if you're comfortable doing it.
You know what, bro? I got no shame.
My wife and I took our daughter to Sesame Place this weekend, and when she met Elmo, she lost her lid, so it's probably something like that.
Yeah, very, very similar.
Yeah.
I could see MJ losing his lid over the Green Power Ranger for sure.
Totally fangirled out over a Green.
Oh, that's so good, man. I love it. Question number 3 is, what would you name your boat if you had one? You might have a boat, though. You live in
the New England one.
I don't have a boat. I wish I had a boat. Probably Legend.
Look at that. I like that.
This guy.
That's a good answer on your feet. I like it.
It's good. What about you, G? I'm going to swing this one to you now.
Oh, my goodness. Are you kidding me? You could have prepped me for this.
Uh-oh.
Hey, he came up with an answer in like 30 seconds.
That doesn't mean that I need to as well. I'll let you know by the end of the podcast.
Right,
this is not my
great.
take 5.
He's not going to be focused the rest of the podcast.
Yeah,
He's going to be
I'm
stewing over this.
Thinking about my boat name.
All right, number 4 is, what's a favorite book you've recently read or maybe you're reading right now?
Ooh, I actually just finished Tyler Reagan's book, who's the president of Catalyst, The Life-Giving.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was actually just looking at that book on Amazon today. We actually met him, what was that, last fall?
Yeah, it's going on not quite a year, but late last fall.
Yeah, he was at our office. They were in Lancaster for one day Catalyst at LCBC Church. So that was pretty neat.
Tyler and the other crew from Catalyst all came in, and good people's down there.
That's awesome.
All right, so MJ's knocking. He's out of the park. So question 5, this is it right here. What is something not many people know about MJ Salvatore?
Ooh. You guys got me with number 5.
Dark secrets. He's sweating now, man. Look at him.
Oh, you know what? Here's something. When I was born, my name was not technically just MJ. It actually used to stand for something.
Okay, and what was it?
It used to stand for Mario John III. And then we did a little legal name change when I was about 4 years old. And now it's just letter M, letter J. We're not going to get into the family debate as to why.
That's funny because we had a phone call last week, and I asked him what the MJ stood for. He's like, actually, it doesn't stand for anything. I was like, man, all right. That's interesting.
Hey, I dig it. I dig it. I dig MJ.
It's just MJ, just like Prince,
That's right. Yeah.
Love it, man. Well, you survived take 5. That was pretty fun, I think.
Woo!
He's sweating. Look at it.
Yeah, get that H2O in you. Get that H2O.
Awesome, man. Well, that was fun. I appreciate you answering those questions for us. I think now we just love to kind of hear your testimony, man. Hear your story, hear your faith journey. If you'd love to share that with us, that'd be awesome.
Oh my gosh, happy to share it. So I just turned 30 a couple months back, and for most of my life growing up as a kid, grew up in a Christian home, went to the private Christian school, to then go to the Christian college fair, to go to the Christian university, because that's what I thought you were supposed to do, and really kind of implemented my, I would say at the time, religion based on my upbringing. There wasn't really a personal relationship with the Lord, just between him and I, until I was about 22 years old. And through a lot of just dark places and just severe brokenness, especially my relationship with my dad growing up, just caused a huge lack of identity in my own heart of what it meant to be a man. What does it actually look like to lead well? All these things were never taught to me, so I kind of just, in my best attempts, tried to do that myself, and kind of just downward spiraled from there, just with a lot of hurt from choices he made and just a lot of pent-up bitterness and anger and frustration. And found out that he was having multiple affairs, and really just I don't know, the anger that I saw in those moments in my late part of my teenage years into my early 20s definitely stayed with me for a very long time. And it wasn't until just amongst the brokenness of just partying in college, just having all of these different, emotional ties with all these different women, being completely drunk at a bar and just making poor choices, to unfortunately having a 14-year-long battle with heavy-duty pornography addiction. And one day when I moved back home from college, God spoke to me. One of the first times I remember just a tangible presence of the Holy Spirit saying to me, "What are you doing?" And just not where he was yelling or pushing, just very gently, "What are you doing?" And I was forced to move home, confront everything that I was running away from at the time. And in that moment, I said, "Lord, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm going to choose you right now. This time it's about you and I. This is not about anybody else. Do whatever needs to be done." And at the time, for where I was at 22, praying that prayer, to see the effects of it 8 years later, part of me wishes, just kind of word vomit, take it back, take it back, take it back, take it back. And just because you never know what the answer to those prayers are going to look like. And the 8-year gap that I prayed that, since I prayed that prayer, the Lord totally started to peel back layers of my heart like an onion, dealing with the bitterness, the resentment, coming clean about the addiction, learning to actually work through the process of forgiveness, to towards my father while while I watched my mom and dad get a divorce. And that happened a couple of years ago. So like just that whole process being drawn out in front of me. Coming home, having everything materialistic stripped away from me, becoming super isolated, not attending a church that was for me at the time, not knowing what community was, all these things. I'm like, Lord, said do whatever needs to be done, not take it all away. And just like super humble moment, super humble moment. And just really, little by slowly, steps were taken for me to just really start acting on what I had prayed versus actually just saying it. And so, okay, do what needs to be done. Got to cut the ties with the toxic people you've been hanging out with. What does that look like? What does it look like to find a church and actually start to get plugged in? What does it look like to actually have real accountability versus the surface level accountability? And little by slowly, the Lord starts to just really like pick apart all those dark areas and just all of those areas that were so just broken and started to just mend them little by little. And with that, I stepped into VOX Church a couple of years ago. We were in transition from a campus pastor at the time who also started right when I came back. Everyone's like, oh, what a coincidence. I'm like, no, just God being good at being God. And he like literally had pulled me aside one day and said, hey, I see something in you. I want to help cultivate the leadership I see. Like, let me help you get to where you need to go. And really took me under his wing and started to invest. And the last 2 years, I feel like there's been an acceleration in my own journey where I've really started to learn what does it mean to actually execute daily rhythms and good disciplines while making sure I'm having my adequate time with God. What does it look like for me to execute self-awareness in my own heart, to ask myself the hard questions, take those questions to the Lord. And then when I got a taste of what that freedom was like, I wanted others to experience it. And that's where God just starts to develop my heart for community groups, men's ministry, seeing people set free from addictions, knowing that generational chains do not define them. What does it look like to build a legacy now to plan for the future later? Like, what are we doing now to plan for that? And so the Lord just continued to increase those desires, and the people that he brought in over the last couple of years have helped fuel me closer to my destiny. So I literally tell people the big, like, 1 or 2 sentence statement of the whole testimony being in Connecticut now. The place that held so much brokenness for me is now the place where God has allowed the most redemption. So
awesome.
That's where I'm at right now. So 30's shaping up to be real great so far, so I'm excited to see what happens with the 24 heart.
Oh man, that's powerful.
That's good stuff. You know, I look back at that, and you know, as you're telling your story, I kind of get into that whole OAI thing, like, okay, observe what he's saying and his story and interpret it, and kind of how does this apply to what we all go through as men. And just a couple of those observations is, you know, I don't know all the details of that dark season of your life, right? But
sure.
It's in those dark seasons that I've found, at least, you know, so many times that the dark stuff is often happens the most when we're in isolation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And even though from the outside looking into your life during that season, like, oh yeah, MJ's got friends and buddies that he's going out with and partying with, but like you come home from those nights, right? We've all been there.
Right.
You come home those nights and you feel completely isolated. You're alone. You feel alone in your conviction. You feel alone in your sin. And then hearing the last couple of years, right, of a man stepping in and saying, hey, I see something in you. I want to cultivate that. I want to pour into you. I want to use my resources to further you along. Like, it all goes back to relationships and you know, trying to find those people in our lives that see things in us that we don't see in ourselves, and need to tell us the things that we don't always like to hear. And it's just so crucial and so significant.
Absolutely, man. Totally agree, man.
Good stuff. Well, if you don't mind, we're just going to kind of touch on MJ. Well, before I even do that, like, just an awesome story of redemption. And, you know, I know you and I have spoken a couple of times and kind of follow you from a distance via social media, and can just in the time frame that you first introduced yourself to me, I think it was Facebook message or email or something. I can't remember. Do you remember what our initial contact was? I can't remember off the top of my head.
It was an email, bro. I think just I had recently joined Instagram and like came across like people to follow, so I'm just like big on networking that way. And I think I just like saw that you were working with the organization, like clicked the link from Men of Iron, and just kind of saw what you were about, and then like found the email.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, right. And from there, like, you know, this sounds super like stalkerish, but like kind of following your journey a little bit via social media and Facebook, and just kind of seeing. I mean, you didn't get into it there, but like you've lost weight, you've gotten your crap together, which is just incredible. So,
Yeah,
and I say that like in a good way. Like,
Look at those guns, man.
yeah, svelte. He's so svelte.
hey guys.
Our listeners are just disappointed right now. If they're
sharing
listening on
headphones,
iTunes,
telling each other that we're svelte. Oh my goodness. But MJ, why don't you give just a current life update, man? Like, what are you up to now? I know you're leading some things volunteer wise at VOX Church. I know you're doing some things at the YMCA. Give us an update on where you're at 30 years old.
Yeah. So again, as soon as 30 hit, a lot of people ask me, "Does it feel different? Does it feel different?" And at first, I was like, "No, not yet. It was just another day." Like, but when you enter into any type of new year, new season, where your focus is fixed on the Lord, I feel like that truly sets you up for where God intends to take you. For me, going into 30, I was very contingent upon who I wanted to start the 30s with and who I also wanted to close my 20s out with. And once 30 hit, all of a sudden, I just kind of hit the ground running. Classes picked up at the YMCA. I picked up this job at the YMCA like 4 years ago on an ad on Craigslist just for like pocket money at the time, not even knowing what God intended to do through it. And physically, it helped to get me to where I wanted to go as far as learning personal training, exercise instruction, and just the gifts of encouragement and this intentionality that God has given me to bless other people with that. When I'm teaching a class and I have a full class, like, guys are learning from that. I thrive off of that energy. So I'm teaching classes, I'm doing personal training, I'm meeting people who were physically where I was at years ago, getting to share my story, but also empathize with them for where they're currently at. Stepped into this new role at the church actually just less than a week ago. They announced me this past Sunday, so this is like very new about this role, but I've been in training for it for a while, unbeknownst to, really myself, until someone was like, "Hey, we actually want you to do this for the church. Like, how would you feel about that?" So immediately, it wasn't even a second thought for me. And I just have a passion now just for continued exercise and just daily spiritual rhythms. And through the volunteer role and even just serving at church, I do a lot of setup and tear down. I'm on the prayer team, so just always had that desire to serve and just give back. So to be able to contend for people is just what my heartbeat is currently at this stage of my life, and I want to keep doing that going into my 30s, and just doing it with the right people, which has led me over the last couple of years and even now to lead men's small groups. I just wrapped up one. We went from April to the end of July, and we actually read through Mark Batterson's book, Play the Man, one of my favorite books that I have ever read. And we had 30 guys show up to this, which is just kind of unheard of. And we literally just walked through life. And there's a big difference when we're actually walking life versus, I think, just doing life. Doing, you could say, yeah, I'm doing life, sure. But when you're walking and you try to link with somebody, it changes the game. So through that, I'm seeing these guys that I've done a lot of small groups with set free. They're stepping into leadership in this upcoming season for our church, leading their own small groups, and just a ripple effect of just a desire and a conviction on my heart to want to see men set free. God has just continued to bless and just really have his hand over. And I just love seeing other people thrive. That's like what brings my heart joy. So that's where I'm at in this season of life. Just watching other people thrive while I'm continuing to just personally develop myself in the process.
That's good stuff,
That's
man.
phenomenal, man. Sounds like you guys at VOX are doing men's ministry the right way. It's certainly you're seeing the effects of it. Because anytime you can get 30 men in a room at a men's event for a church, I think you're doing something right.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. You know what's cute? We actually had the first night that we met at the end of April, my co-leaders and I were praying before, and we prayed over the space. We were so diligent about how we went about this, what material we wanted to do. So the first night, we're all gathered, and I'm just laughing to myself. I'm like, God, how is this going to go? Literally, he had the age range he had, 19 to as old as late 60s, and everywhere in between. Married, single, divorced, kids, no kids, college, what you name it. The first night, I'm watching like 4 or 5 guys break down crying, and I was like, I expected this to happen like 6 weeks in. Like, it's something you wouldn't see, but I think what allows us as men to get skyrocketed to where we need to go is that transparency. Because if you're not willing to be transparent and vulnerable out the gate, like, you're going to stay at the surface. And it's like an iceberg. You only see the tip. And you know icebergs, there's so much underneath that has to get unpacked. And I really feel like when there's a common vision, there's a common goal, yes, I want to get better, that transparency and that authenticity just gives birth effortlessly. And then you see the change happen right in front of you. So that's just like a cool side story. That happened like 2 weeks ago now. I'm just like sitting back, watching them all just soar.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we're getting off script a little bit here, off the agenda, but I feel like we should just go this direction. I mean, obviously, being in the role that you are at your church, kind of even, I'll just use this men's group as an example. You take 30 guys, you're reading through this book, there's conversations that are happening on a weekly basis. And I was just at what they called a tune-up event a couple weeks ago, a group of guys here locally that put it on, and the speaker that came in talked about, his philosophy is that men, the number one issue with men is focus. The number one issue with men is focus. And I think I knew that deep down inside. I'd never really kind of heard it just like put it that simply, like, hey, it's not finances, it's not faith, it's focus. Like, if men could just stay focused, we would be a lot better off. And I said this to my executive coach a couple weeks ago. I said, I've been in a season of life where, married, young kids, growing ministry, demands, responsibilities are growing, and, it's just been a lot. And the one thing that has left my life quicker than I realized, and now I've got to be super intentional about it before, that was never the case because it was just always came very naturally, was like my community, my friends, the fellowship, the everything in my life. And I think there's seasons of our lives as men where maybe we've got more time, maybe it comes a little bit more naturally, and then there are seasons that we've got to be super intentional about making sure that we're connected, whether that's with a mentor or whether that's with a group of friends or whatever it may be. But to hear somebody say the number one issue is focus, and what I realized when he said that was I have not been focused on the community in my life. Like, I have not made it a priority. And it's not because I don't want it to, but it's just the rhythms of life. You've mentioned a couple times that it's the rhythms of life that can sometimes ebb and flow and take us out of what we really need and what we really want. And I think the enemy's really pleased with that sometimes. Because if our priorities aren't in order, very cunningly, very discreetly, before we know it, we don't have people in our lives that we're sitting there reading a book with, and talking about that with. So I don't know what your experience is with the men. I'm not to throw VOX Church under the bus or anything like that, but like dealing with men in general is I find that a lot of guys find their value, find their purpose in what they're doing for their career. They're putting their kids' events and priorities, well above what they need it to be. And before they know it, it's been several months before they've even sat face-to-face with another man, and talked through what's going on. So I don't know what your experience has been with that at the church or just in life in general. But
I say, like, just the way that the men's ministry's been building over the last, year or so, it's still, relatively new. So I've kind of been on the front lines of, the beginning of it. So I speak on personal experience versus what I've seen currently in the church, since it's all still new. But for myself, seeing the guys who showed up to this group, the very first question I asked them, I said, give me your name, why do you want to be a part of this group? And about 85% of them said, for fellowship and brotherhood. And I think the focus and just I think the focus and even the willingness to step into something like that dissipates when we choose to be isolated. And I think the rhythms of life could sometimes unintentionally isolate us, which is where self-awareness is so critical. Because in those moments, we know if it's going to be the day's going to be bad. Let's put it that way. Like, just, if you know, it's going to be one of those days, you're going to have to push through, you're going to have to fight a little harder. Are you going to let that circumstance and that attitude dictate what happens throughout the rest of your relationships throughout the day? In the workplace, like, is it going to ask myself, is it going to affect the way I teach the class? Is it going to affect the way that I sit down in this meeting with one of my guys from my study? Is it going to affect how I train with one of these clients? And I think as long as we're literally putting ourselves above other people, because it's not about us, that bridges the gap, I think, for more direction and more focus. We realize it's not about us. Like, we could take care of ourselves, yes, and that's important, but I can't be everything to everybody. And that's another lesson that I've learned just with the guys who haven't been as focused or lost that focus. I can't be everything to everybody. So what does it look like to have them get paired up with somebody who can get that time, who maybe they can get that focus with? And it's a learning experience just like anything else. But throughout the duration of my study, I had a lot of my guys randomly paired up. I prayed through like my list each week, and I was like, hey, you and you guys are paired up for the week. You guys are paired up for the week. And just to see what God did through that, where it was just this week, check in with your partner about purity. Check in with your partner about their tithing. Check in with your partner about just relational anything, you know. Ask them how they are emotionally. How's your soul? Things like that. And I think just to have somebody in your corner, even if it was just by a pairing, to know that, hey, someone's for me. Someone actually wants to know how I'm doing. They're not just asking, how are you doing? And just kind of like, oh, that's good. It's like, okay, but really? And kind of force them in a good way out of their comfort zone to dig a little deeper. And once that first little, like, chunk was dug, barriers started to come down, chains started to fall, and the focus got refixed on God because they were linking arms with a brother who was just for them.
Yep.
So that's what I've seen happen. The focus gets fixed when the priorities are in sync and when you're with the right people and you decide, hey, we're actually going to link and we're actually going to like do this.
Awesome. Well, MJ, we certainly appreciate your time. We're kind of coming up on our 30-minute mark here shortly, but certainly want to thank you for your time and thank you for just your overall advocacy for men, in particular men with being engaged in mentorships and encouraging one another and accountability and balance and spiritual growth and just the overall significance of that in our culture. We believe that if we start seeing more guys like yourself, you know, leading initiatives like this that you're doing at VOX Church and even in your community, you know, that's when we're going to start to see a culture change. So thanks for everything you're doing, man.
Yeah, before you go, MJ, I'd love to hear just quickly, just a couple, 1, 2, 3 guys in your life, men in your life who have poured into you over the years and been influential. Give you a time to shout them out.
Oh man, let's hope. You know what? I'm a firm believer in being like as raw as possible. So if I get emotional, I don't even care. I don't even care if I cry.
Oh, let the tears flow, man. G's a crier. Garrett's a crier here, so.
Yeah, but I don't cry on podcasts.
Perfect. So the first 3 that come to my mind, my campus pastor, Josh Conrad, who immediately pulled me aside and said, I see leadership in you. I want to invest in you. I can help you get to where you need to go because I know that the sky's the limit for you. He didn't have to do that. That was a stirring prompting from the Holy Spirit. So his impact on me to just actually be faithful and actually know that what I put in my hand to you, God will bless just by stepping out. He will continue to just be relentless and just always point me back to God, always point me back to what God has like called me to. Called me out on my stuff. When I get ahead of myself, and that's what I need. And so Josh Conrad, hands down, campus pastor, number 1. Number 2, my best friend, Aaron Barnett, who is out in Milwaukee. We actually connected via Instagram like 3 years ago and got to hang out. We traveled together. We're getting ready to go to the Catalyst Leadership Conference in a few weeks down in Atlanta.
Awesome.
But Aaron Aaron is probably the one dude in my life who literally was like, no, we're going to link up, and has actually like held true to that word, probably closer than any other guy that the Lord has allowed me to walk with. And people assume that we've known each other our whole lives just because of that dynamic. And literally, he will call me out on things. He will call me higher. He will point out blind spots in me. We will spend time praying together. We will share what God is teaching each other. We are in the process of editing a book that we wrote together. So, like, things that you never thought could happen just from social media being used the right way and trusting that God is doing something even if you don't even understand it is incredible. I consider him probably the little brother that I never knew I wanted. So
that's awesome. Now, number 3, you got another one?
Number 3 would be my dude Tim Isley, who I met a year ago, came into church, and you want to talk about the community aspect. I'm new here. I don't have any Christian friends. I said, I'll be your friend. I said, give me a year. What do you want to see in your life? What am I contending for? Literally linked up and have been running for the last year together, like from an accountability standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. He's getting ready to actually lead his own group in the next few weeks. Like, and just seeing the transition, that friendship was one of the first ones where I was able to put my leadership and discipleship into practice with. So there's so much sacred weight there for me, and he just made me a better leader.
Awesome,
man. Appreciate you giving us that. Awesome, man. Well, we are going to close out the podcast. MJ, we thank you for joining us, man. This was awesome. It was great to sit down and hear your story and just hear what you're doing up there in Bridgeport, Connecticut, in the New England area. You're not a Pats fan now, are you?
No.
Good. All right. Good. We could still be friends.
No, honestly, like, I think I don't even, like, watch football. So, like, I watch everyone else, and I just sit and I just laugh.
Oh, I love it.
I love it.
Hey, do you have time to hang on and we can chat once we end the podcast? We'll just be a couple minutes here wrapping up.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
And by the way, I do want to throw out a little challenge to MJ here because I think it's time for Men of Iron to go to the New England states. So,
oh man, yes. Let's do it.
I think they might be a good ministry fit at VOX Church, but I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I got some connections within the church. We'll see what happens.
All right, good stuff, man.
All right, MJ, thanks again, brother. Appreciate it, man.
Guys are awesome.
All right. Well, what's next, Stevie? What's new this month?
Man, we got a lot going on here.
How about the office flooding? How about that?
Yeah, that's certainly new.
Yeah, wow. So can I give the listeners a little recap of that?
You can certainly give a recap.
Yeah, so Friday, it starts raining around lunchtime, and it was nuts. I just had this feeling, looking back now, being at lunch, I just had this feeling like, man, I probably should go back to the office and tell everyone to go home. It was raining so hard. And our office is in a floodplain, like it's but to get water in the building takes a lot of rain, a lot of water. The worst that's going to happen typically is we get flooded, the street gets flooded, we can't get out or whatever. But like to get water in the building was amazing. But I go back, and now looking back, I really believe it was like prophetic Holy Spirit prompting to tell people to get out because that's how fast it all came. But I'm going through office to office like, hey, you need to get out of supply, you need to get out of supply, you need to get home. And people are looking at me like I'm nuts. Well, fast forward a couple hours, TJ Musidis, founder and owner of Walk in Love, calls me and he's like, dude, we've got water coming in the building. So rush down there. That's a podcast in and of itself, was getting to supply at that point. But to make a long story short, the little town that we live in, Manheim, Pennsylvania, a.k.a. the promised land of milk and honey, we got 10 plus inches of rain in 4 hours. Like, it was absolutely bizarre. So I found myself on Friday night standing in about 6 to 7 inches of water inside our office. Thank God TJ got in there as fast as he did. He was able to get all of our stuff of value off the ground and up on higher, desks and things like that. But it was crazy. So, hence the reason we're shooting a podcast from my basement today.
Yeah.
But anyway,
thank you to
what's new.
Brian and Heather for allowing us to shoot here. By the way.
Yeah. So what's coming up this month? It's not happening this month, but we are taking our last couple of spots. If you're out there and you love sunshine and warm weather in the month of December in Florida, and you want to support Men of Iron financially, and you like to play a little golf and take your wife away for a couple days and treat her to a spa, man, we have our One Iron Classic coming up at Stream Song Resort, just outside of Tampa, Florida. It is a first-class, world-class resort, and we're taking some folks down there that are supporting the ministry, and we're treating them to a couple great days of golf and fun and fellowship. So that's December 9th to 12th. You can check out menofiron.org/OneIronClassic for more information. We've got a fall launch coming up in Reading, Pennsylvania, October 27th. We'll be training some mentors and proteges from Berks County, Pennsylvania. And we are growing, Stevie.
That's crazy, man.
We are growing as a staff, and we are bringing on another full-time hire in Brian Ziegler.
BZ.
He's starting full-time as our state director in the state of Ohio, and we are also have a search right now. There's a search out for our director of operations, which will work from our headquarters here in Manheim, Pennsylvania. So good things happening, and if you're out there and you're listening and you feel like maybe a director of operations position open is kind of what your gift sets leans up to and lines up with, then certainly feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah.
But other than that, Steve, why don't you give them some final thoughts?
Final thoughts, man. Again, thanks to MJ for being on the podcast. That was good stuff. You can check out our podcast on iTunes. Search the Men of Iron podcast. Go on there and leave us a 5-star review with a awesome comment about how great we are.
Yeah, make sure you put 5 stars and a comment, because those of you that just rate it without a comment, that's cheating.
I mean, come on. And since MJ was such a great guest, you can put his name in the comment, too, about how awesome he is,
And when you type it in, make sure you say in your mind, Salvatore.
I love it, man. So, yeah, you can find us on iTunes. You can also go to menofiron.org/MOI podcast to see our latest podcast, and you can find us on iTunes through there as well. So go on, subscribe, check out some podcasts. There's some good stuff on there. Thank you again to our sponsor, Brookside Builders, and G.
I guess it's the sign-off. This is the famous sign-off, everybody. I've got to do it every podcast.
You
do it once.
It's not a podcast
so
if you don't.
Blessings, is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one,
That's
right?
it.
So it's blessings and honor and glory and power forever.
See you guys.